Hey, what is going on, y'all? It's your boy Rhino Man here. This is SBN Sports Bash Nation. Now, we are just a little over a month until free agency begins, and the Bears definitely have a few holes that they need to plug up before the draft begins. You know, plugging up these holes will allow us to have the best draft possible, so we're not necessarily drafting on positional need, but getting the best player available. Now, I have a list of 7 guys the Bears should be targeting on offense. There's not really a lot of big names on this list, as I think a lot of the top free agents, like T. Higgins, will be franchised, are just not going to be worth the cost. I love Mike Evans. I think he's the most underrated receiver all time, but I couldn't justify the Bears dishing out $25 million a year for a second wide receiver. So here are 7 guys I think the Bears should be looking at, starting with Connor Williams, center for Miami. Connor Williams was the highest ranked center according to PFF until he tore his ACL in late November. Obviously, that's a huge concern, as this is the second time he's torn an ACL, but if he can be ready sometime during training camp or at the beginning of the season, I think that could be an option. We could bring back a guy like Lucas Patrick, have him fill in until Connor Williams is ready to take over. And the injury definitely brought his price down. If we could nail him on a 3-year, $30 million deal, that would be something to consider. With sports science evolving the way it has, players are coming back faster than ever, so I don't think he should be completely off our board like some people have been saying. Now, a second option at center would be Aaron Brewer, center for the Tennessee Titans. He would be a cheaper and healthier option. After being used primarily as a backup his first 2 seasons, he started all 17 games at guard for Tennessee in 2022. Then he switched over to center in 2023 and started all 17 games. So he's a very reliable option. He's a restricted free agent, and I believe Tennessee has a second round tender on him. But I think if we could grab him on a 3-year, $18 million deal, that would be groovy. Now, speaking of Tennessee Titans free agents, the next guy on my list is Derrick Henry, running back for Tennessee. Derrick Henry has been an absolute monster since he entered the league in 2016. I think he's the best running back in the last 15 years. Former Offensive Player of the Year. He has 9,502 yards rushing for his career, including that insane 2020 where he had 2,027 yards. He suffered an injury that cut 2021 short, but he has been a reliable option for the last 2 years, rushing for over 1,000 yards in 2022 and 2023. I think he still has some juice left in the tank, and I would sign him on something like a 2-year, $18 million deal. Now, speaking of Henrys, the next free agent on my list is Hunter Henry, tight end for New England. Hunter Henry's been a solid pro since joining the league in 2016. He's usually money for 500 to 600 receiving yards, and I think Hunter Henry would be a great replacement for Robert Tonyan at that number 2 tight end spot. You know, Tonyan was very disappointing. I think Hunter Henry could fill that role admirably, and if we could get him on something like a 1-year, $7.5 million deal, I would move on that. Now, the next option on my list is Tony Pollard, running back for Dallas. Tony Pollard was a reliable backup to Ezekiel Elliott for 4 years until taking over as the starter in 2023 when he rushed for 1,005 yards on 252 carries, which was not bad. It certainly wasn't as impressive as 2022 when he gained 1,007 yards on 193 carries. He was kind of disappointing last year, but he has been a good running back in this league. If we could sign him on something like a 1-year, $7 million prove-it deal, I would consider that. Next on my list is wide receiver Calvin Ridley from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Calvin Ridley is another interesting option. He has major talent. He had a breakout 2020 in Atlanta where he had 90 receptions for 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns. Then he was riddled with some controversy. He only played 5 games in 2021, and then he was suspended for all of 2022 for sports betting, which is a really stupid move being in the NFL. He came back in 2023 with Jacksonville. He had a solid season. He had 76 receptions for 1,016 yards and 8 touchdowns. For a guy who really hadn't played the previous 2 years, I think he's just getting ramped up. I think Ridley has borderline number 1 receiver talent, and imagine a Bears offense with DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Calvin Ridley as your receivers. You got Cole Kmet at tight end, and then a guy like Derrick Henry at running back. That would be absolutely scary. He's a $20+ million a year talent, but because of the baggage he has, I think we could get him at 4 years, $68 million, and that would be something to consider. And finally on my list, it's a guy who I've been hearing a lot about on a lot of different channels signing with the Bears, and I agree, that would be wide receiver Curtis Samuel from Washington. He would be a great third option at about the same price range as re-signing Darnell Mooney. I know it's a move that DJ Moore would love, as they are close buddies due to the time that they had together in Carolina. He had a good year in 2020 with Carolina, where he had 77 catches for 851 yards, and then he signed with Washington. He was limited to 5 games and 1 start in 2021, and then the last 2 years, he's had about 650 yards, so I think a change of scenery would be good for him, and a 3-year, $34 million contract sounds just about right. So those are some of the free agents on offense I think the Bears should be targeting. What do you guys think? Would you gamble on a guy like Connor Williams? Do you like the idea of signing Derrick Henry and Calvin Ridley? Let me know in the comments, and as always, stay blessed. Peace.